Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to MythVision Podcast. I've been taking quite an interest in Islam lately. I think there's so much in common with biblical studies, understanding the Bible, its foundations, Judaism, Christianity, and such. And I said, well, it's just one of the three monotheistic religions. I've never taken a dive into this. And you guys know I interview people who have left religions all the time, cults, you name it. And I want to peer into their thinking because I also share that in common. I have left religion myself, and there's a lot we have in common with people like that. So today, Apostate Aladdin, and I don't even want to pretend to really pronounce how he's supposed to pronounce his name. Welcome to MythVision, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, Aladdin's fine. I go by Aladdin.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I hope I'm not glowing on you here. I'm trying to be presentable. I'm going to get us started on our intro. I feel like, I don't know what it is, man. Gods keep showing up to my desk here in my studio where I actually do all my studying and research. And recently, it seems like Allah showed face. So let's see what the intro has to say. Ladies and gentlemen, we are MythVision. Apostate Aladdin, you were a Muslim. Let's deep dive into this. At some point, I'd love us to open up the studio during this video and, of course, allow one person at a time to have questions or comments, something like that. We will not let them hog the space. They will not control the medium here. I will be in control of that to make sure that things go as planned, meaning everyone is being respectful and they give you the opportunity to respond. But I also know you don't have all the answers, right? Like none of us have all the answers, but there is a sufficient enough, I guess, evidence that you'll be able to present today on why you personally said, I can't do this anymore, or whatever it was that woke you up. So first off, tell us a little bit about you. I mean, you hide your identity for one. It seems that you just don't want threats on your life or something like that. What's the reason behind the mask?
So it really varies depending on, the person's situation. It could be as benign as just everyone in their life annoying them about it, or it could be more consequential. There might be trouble with certain governments if you happen to travel through a certain country, if you're, that big of a YouTuber, which I am not, but just in case, I don't want to take any risks. I also have to think about people in my life. Like I don't want them to be hurt by extension, just by association of knowing me. So yeah, I think it's a lot better this way as well because I get to focus on sharing things that I wouldn't necessarily want associated with my name and my family. I have a little bit more freedom to talk anonymously here. Yeah, so that's why I wear the mask.
Wow. I must say this up front, I have never interviewed people from any cults that hid their identity to just talk about this. And you're not the only person, though. I've communicated with a few other people, and they say, they are concerned about the well-being of their family or friends because this is one of those religions that it's like, sure, 90% of people who are on the internet will disagree with you and argue with you or say, hey, yeah, no, I'm willing to debate and go back and forth. But then there's some that are very, I guess they feel it's their right to fight people like you who are just trying to explain why we should be able to be critical of the religion we were once part of. as well as reasons why we think it may not be true. And we want to help others wake up from that. So tell us, what was your background in as a Muslim? What did you believe? Were you part of a particular brand? And then we'll go into the deconversion.
Sure. So I grew up Muslim since birth. I grew up in a moderate Muslim family in Saudi Arabia, though I didn't uh, I didn't learn the Saudi flavor of Islam, the Wahhabi sect, basically, or school of thought. Um, I was very enthusiastic about religion growing up, and I was a Sunni, which is kind of the default. The majority of Muslims are Sunnis, and for the longest time, I wasn't even aware of the existence of other sects. I mean, I've heard of Shias, for example, the second largest sect, but I had this idea that we're right and they've got something wrong, but maybe God's gonna judge them by their intentions. So yeah, I just focused on me and trying to get into heaven. But at a certain point, I started having questions. And I was someone who I didn't necessarily study the religion, from top to bottom, but I grew up learning the Quran. Memorizing it was the main focus of my lessons and learning how to read it in a good voice. Um, but I also understood it because it's my mother tongue. Like Arabic is my first language.
Really?
Though, yeah, Arabic is my first language, and a lot of people seem to miss that because they think I've got some kind of North American English accent. So anyway,
Hey, you
um,
sound your English is good. It is very
thank you.
good. Um,
Thanks.
let's get into the deep end, and then we'll open up the channel for only Muslims. I really only want to open up to allow Muslims to come on. And if you guys have questions, you're more than welcome to super chat your questions. I will be happy to ask Apostate Aladdin, and he'll do his best, do his best to try and give you an answer or to tell you where he's coming from. So real quick, Mr. Monster says, could Islam fit in the bite model like the JWs?
Absolutely, yes. I've actually fit it like before. I had written a blog post about this, and it's the topic of an upcoming video that I want to talk about. It doesn't seem as culty as Jehovah's Witnesses just because it doesn't have that kind of reputation. But when you compare it to the model, yes, pretty much all of it is covered in Islam. So I would say yes.
Wow. Yeah, I thought so far as I've been going into this, it sounds that way. And then there's also the depending on where you're at, I guess it varies on how intense too. So what woke you up? What
Mhm.
happened to you, my friend? You were studying it, or at least to some degree, you were memorizing it, you were part of it. And I'm sure you had plenty of emotions attached to this faith. Tell us about your road to waking up.
So it was a gradual process. I mean, I believed this stuff growing up, and I liked learning more about it because to me it was reality, right? Why wouldn't I want to know more about history and reality and our purpose in life and how things actually work? Like, forget about science. I was interested in science, but I was still interested in how things work beneath the surface, right? That's how I understood it at the time. And I've always been inquisitive. Like ever since I was a child, I would ask questions like, "Where were we before God created us?" And obviously, my parents wouldn't necessarily know how to answer that.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a religious answer or two, kind of boilerplate nonsense answer. Uh, but it didn't bother me in terms of shaking my faith at the time. But growing up, I started to have questions about the fairness of this whole system. They weren't specifically about the things that are debated in Islam, like the controversies and this and that. I wasn't even aware of most of them. Like I viewed extremists as extremists, and I thought they misunderstood the religion in every way, and so on and so forth. But around like my teenage years, I had questions about um, predestination and free will. How could both of them work together? That was specific to Islam among other religions. I had questions about how fair is this test if it's basically um, more or less a game of chance. being born in a certain region. I was told that if you didn't hear of Islam or if you weren't invited the right way, God's going to test you in the afterlife, which, seems like I'd rather Muslims not spread Islam then, because the test seems pretty easy in the afterlife, right? Like, do you believe in God? Obviously, yes. Like, you brought me back to life. So none of this sat right in my head, but I put it aside and I just continued with basically trying to do what I need to do to be a good Muslim. And I had waves of not sure if I believe this stuff, asking questions, and so on and so forth. But I think it was the obvious lack of empathy, basically from God's part. Uh, it seems like the empathy is conditional. If you believe in Him and you really, really beg Him, then God is merciful. But mercy is not about, that's not really what mercy is about. Mercy would be forgiving someone who wasn't, who didn't believe that God existed. Sorry about my glasses; they're fogging up like
It's
crazy right now
okay.
for some reason. Yeah, so that really sat with me, and I couldn't get past it. I couldn't get past that one point. And that's when I realized something's wrong with this religion. And then I dug a little deeper, and every time I found an answer to these questions, it just plunged me deeper into disbelief, basically.
What
Yeah.
were some of the problems? I mean, I guess in the faith, did you hear outsiders who ever criticized the faith, or was that something that just wasn't a thing you heard because they were too afraid to even do it, that you couldn't actually hear some criticisms from them? It was the internal fighting, kind of like a civil war mentality within Muslims. It's like, hold on, why do they say that? Aren't they like us? We believe in the same God. What's the problem? Did that cause any problems for your faith, or?
Not at all. I didn't pay much attention to that stuff at all. Especially that growing up, like I said, I didn't pay much attention to other sects to begin with, and I thought all fights and extremists were just misunderstandings. So that didn't affect it at all. And I didn't hear much criticism of Islam growing up. And even when I was in a space, like when I traveled, left Saudi Arabia, and I started hearing and seeing people online commenting. It was after Charlie Hebdo attacks, for example, a lot of Islamophobic, bigoted stuff. And I was a defender of Islam and Muslims in general. I would keep saying things like, how could there be 1.4 billion aggressive people in the world when that wasn't really the question at all. Yeah, and that's I was a defender of Islam at some point. Yeah.
I want everybody to know, go subscribe to his channel. He
Oh,
just
thank you.
dropped a video called it says, what, don't be dumb on the thumbnail. And of course, he's not saying that because he's too nice. He's too nice of a guy. But in the video, there's a guy who responds to critics of Islam. And man, there's some stuff in that video I highly recommend anyone to look at, where they're talking about the laws in certain states about marrying or having sexual relations with extremely young women. In one state, it's 14 with the parents' consent, and then in I think in California, he said there's not an age restriction or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And you're like, how does this guy know this stuff anyway? Like, of course it matters because he probably gets criticisms. But like when you're
Mhm.
using that as arsenal to go, well, your Western system's all okay with the idea as well. You need to get. I don't know anyone who thinks 9 is okay if that is true. And so, you go into a lot of this stuff on your channel. All of that's down in the description. Everybody should go subscribe. Now, I want to get into what really was the Achilles heel to your faith. I know it's gradual, but what were some of the questions that you had that when you went investigated, like you said in this video, you went and you look at Muslim sources, because you're not going to listen to guys like me. I'm a skeptic, but I'm a
Yeah.
very friendly skeptic. Like, I'll get along with anybody, even if their faith, it doesn't matter what their faith is, things like that. I'll get along with you even if we disagree. You're not going to listen to me though. Me doing an interview, poking holes into Islam, whatever, Christianity, you name it. You're not going to listen to me.
Mhm.
But what happened? Who did you hear, and what questions did they not quite answer that didn't sit right that made you finally walk away?
You actually bring up a very good point. I wouldn't have listened to you back in my questioning phase or even before then. I came across atheists in general in my life and online, and I just thought they were obnoxious. They were just, doing this to be contrarians, basically, and I didn't think much of it. I wasn't aggressive towards them, and I didn't judge them too harshly. I just thought, not for me. Well, what's the point of having all these, I'm right, no, I'm right kind of arguments?
Right.
So that's how I saw it at the time. Um, Sorry, can you remind me what the question was? I kind of went on a
No,
tangent a
I
little bit.
guess you only. I'm glad you took the time to explain that. I was the same
Mhm.
way. I wouldn't
Yeah.
listen to anyone who wasn't within my paradigm, within my
Hmm.
worldview. So you went to Muslims and you were studying and looking at the different answers out there that they give, and you realize something. It's like something started to wake you up. So, what were some of the things you were looking into as you were deconverting, and you were realizing they don't even agree with one another first and
Hmm.
foremost, and then some of the answers they were given were like not making sense, and you were starting to go, "Hold on, what is this? What is going on?" So, tell us some of that.
You Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It was a gradual process, but at a certain point I thought to myself, I need to make decisions in my life that involve other people, and I want to be very clear about my beliefs. So, before I involve someone else in my life, for example, or I make any big moves in my life, I want to know where my head's at. And that's when I really started facing these questions head on. And like you said, I did go to Muslims to ask them. I did not listen to any critics of Islam, nothing like that. I didn't even come across the questions that the so-called haters of Islam would ask. These were all just like original questions, for the most part, at least. So, like I said, I started off with the question of how could we have free will if God already. Sometimes in a hadith, it's explicitly mentioned that God had decided things. It's not just that God knows what things are going to happen, but it's up to Him whether you could be a good Muslim and 1 second before you die, God could send you to hell. That's explicitly said, and I couldn't consolidate. How could God decide everything, yet it is the fault of the person who is just acting out this play? It's kind of like the Adam and Eve, eating the apple thing.
Yeah.
That was part of his plan all along. So how is that, a sin? Like, how can he fault them for that kind of thing? Um, so that was a major one. And then like I mentioned earlier, it was about this game of chance. And I thought there's so many people who are by default going to hell. I mean, even if they heard the right version of Islam and then they had the nicest, Muslim friend who took them to all the best masjids, they are likely not going to convert. Like the percentages, it's just how it is. And that didn't sit right with me. And then some of the controversial issues, like the prophet marrying a child, and how Islam views women, like the verse I had read and memorized that verse growing up about, I'm pretty sure you've heard of the wife beating verse
Hmm.
in the Quran. Um,
Do you want to
so
say
I
it? I'd
started.
love to hear you say it in Arabic if you remember it.
واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن فعظوهن وهجروهن في المضاجع واضربوهن. That's just the relevant part of it right now.
Okay.
Um, I can read it in the way that the Quran is, but I feel a little self-conscious right now.
Don't worry.
But yeah,
I'm just
I
having
might
fun
flex
with you,
that
man.
later. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, yeah. So the thing is though, I've got, the exegesis books right here, or at least I've got one of them, and the rest are just accessible on the internet, and it's my mother tongue, so I can read what these scholars said about these verses. It's not me trying to interpret, the word beat meaning beat, which it very clearly does. So I went to all these exegeses, and I actually asked sheikhs and faith counselors and a bunch of different people from different backgrounds in Islam, even different schools of thought. And I talked to a Salafi, I talked to a Sufi, and their answers were, it was very clear they were trying to plug a hole, basically. They would try to throw things at a wall till something sticks. And the same sheikh would tell me multiple different excuses and basically say it could have been this, or it could have been that, or God could have meant this, or could have meant that. And it really made me realize we don't understand what these words mean. If you are to take the words of these scholars that there's a lot of differences, why isn't God more precise with his language?
Right.
If God is truly perfect, why would he leave room for misunderstanding? And why would he trick us by using a word that clearly means beat when, if his intention was not beat? But worst of all was finding the sheikhs who tell it as it is. Like, there's no sugarcoating. It's, this is what's in the verse, and it's okay because so and so and so. And that's also very shocking to me. But it wasn't because I saw one perspective that I didn't like. It's the fact that there were so many, and they were all just trying to make it okay rather than make sense of it, if that makes sense.
It's
So
interesting.
that,
I
yeah,
think
that shook me.
Daniel, what's his name? He debated
Hakikachu. Yeah.
Hikachu. Yeah. Did you hear how
Yeah.
he? I'm sure you saw some clips from other channels. Did
I
you?
just
Did you
saw
see?
like part of what he said, and I'm not shocked. Like, this is the kind of
Yeah.
stuff that it's been driving me nuts because I tell this to someone who's outside of this whole Islam ecosystem, and they would be very shocked. How couldn't we have heard about this? But we've been shouting about this for a while now. It's repulsive. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
he
repulsive.
really had no filter. He didn't beat around the bush. He didn't reinterpret things to allegory or spiritual meaning or some other way of saying, no, it doesn't mean that. Like, this guy went all the way from beating wives to slavery is okay. It's better than, all of this. I mean, like, he went so far to pretty much the way I thought of it. And maybe this starts to, like, as you left the faith, you look back, you realize, like, whoa, those things I didn't even realize till now how insane these ideas are in the 21st century now that we've learned what we've learned. But it's almost like he wanted to go back to the 7th century or 6th century, like, 6th, 7th century. And, like,
Yeah.
that's the way of life. Like, the way it was then is the way it should always be. And he was trying to just use the text that was written in this milieu as the standard for all time. The prophet, he's the standard of all time. The way he lived his life and the things that he actually did is how anyone should mimic and imitate. And that's pretty shocking when you hear a guy come on and say that. And a lot of Muslims think this way, but they're not on the
Hmm.
front lines having to aggressively debate and defend it all the time. They just believe it because it's everyday life. It's all normal.
I mean, some people just casually carry that belief and do go about doing their jobs, and it's not really too consequential. But
Right.
more often than not, it carries negative sentiments. Like, even if you're not out there fighting for Allah's name, how you view a disbeliever is obviously a lot more negative, and you're gonna treat them negatively. It seeps into every aspect of life because Islam is such a totalitarian religion, even among moderates. Like, I don't think moderate Christians compare to moderate Muslims in terms of not necessarily. I'm not going to say like extremism, but adherence to a lot of various things in religion. Like, it is observed in every aspect of life, and for some reason, people like Hakikachu and others romanticize this idea of a glorious time when this system worked for everybody and this is the fairest way to do things. I can never understand that. Again, I heard this from every sheikh ever. It's just like, the West is corrupt. And they would go on these like rants, every sheikh I spoke to, without me even talking about the West or talking about child marriage. They just, preemptively talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
They'd say things like, the West is corrupt, colonization, that's why our countries aren't doing too well. But when Sharia, if we implemented the correct way, things are going to be great. But it has never, at least in the modern times, has been implemented in a correct way. So why are we bothering?
Right.
Well, yeah.
It's a good point. I mean, obviously, I'd love to see people wake up. And it seems like even the moderate liberal, if I could use the term, Christians today, a lot of them have normal lives, and it's almost just a tradition that they'll go to church on a Sunday, or they have a baptism for their child, or like whatever. Like, they have these little traditions that don't impact them in any critical, serious way. And they're even willing to point out errors in the Bible. They're open to these ideas. I'm looking for those kind of Muslims that are actually more scholarly, but also like willing to see what's actually going on. I mean, I interviewed Shadi Nasir, Dr. Shadi Nasir, points out there's variants, there's issues, transmission is not perfect, things like that. Like, he's very open about this. If a Muslim came on my channel and goes, there's none of that and it's all perfect, that's not what my channel is about, right? So let me give you an example. Someone in the chat, obviously must be a practicing Muslim, said he does not understand predestination, so he left Islam. Ha 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 ha. Like, and you know what? I'm already, as a Christian, right, in my mind, when I was Christian, like, I'm already seeing how I responded to Christians who
I've been in their shoes. Yeah.
Left. Yeah. Like, and they left, and I'm going, you left for that reason. You don't know. And now I'm actually in their shoes going, holy crap, I see it now. Like, this is just me being honest, right? So of course, nothing you say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can't say anything.
It's not about this person. That's the thing. They're not my audience. It's not about fighting with them. They think it's some kind of rite of passage that I have to prove to them that I was first religious, prove to them that my reasons are valid. The thing is, my conclusions about Islam not being from God are by default valid because it was never proven to be from God. Right. But what I'm doing is just extra. It's me validating what, all these people think. Their secret thoughts that they can't share because they're too blasphemous, or they're shamed for, or they shame themselves for. This is just me telling them, hey, you're not the only one who thought of this. I thought I was the only one who thought of this, and I thought something was wrong with me. It's.
And then I'd like to address the perfect dawah. You were on here yesterday, okay? This is something I said in my video I launched last night with Dr. Shadi Nasir. I'm not sure how long, and I'm speaking to you, Aladdin, but I'm letting the whole world who watches this video understand MythVision podcast. This is not a channel that promotes these religions. This isn't a channel that is open to, like, we're trying to prove Islam's true, or we want to allow every single show I do has to allow Muslims, or has to allow Christians, or has to allow Jews, or whoever it might be, to come defend their Christianity or whatever the version might be. MythVision is taking a vision of the myth. We're looking at the imperfections, the humanity, how these things are not from God. There's no evidence that these are actually from God. If anything, we can show that humans, men in certain regions with certain building blocks in their locale, help to develop these things. So if you don't like that, I can't help it. I am going to have people come on and ask questions of Aladdin, but I want you guys to know, one person at a time will come on. I will make sure that I'm censoring this in the sense that it's not going to get out of hand, right? We want to have respectful dialogue. I'm not sure I'm always going to do this, though, because if the attitude that always comes is this isn't fair because you're criticizing Islam and I have to speak and defend it, make your own channel, create your own content, and do that. I have no problem. Trust me, I won't be over there on your channel like bothering you. You know what I'm saying? You have something to defend. We're just trying to point out things that he's gone through and where he's at. So I get it. There's a defense mechanism that comes when you want to defend your religion. I did the same thing. But you don't have to be here, right? You don't. You've got other things in life you could go do than watch this channel. If that is that offensive to you, that you just can't help it, you got to speak your piece. Trust me, Christians do the same thing on my channel as well, right? They get really upset and you're going to go to hell and you're wrong. You don't understand the Bible. You don't know what you just read. These scholars are stupid. You name it. It's nothing new to me. So I want to address that elephant in the room for those who are in the chat, making sure they understand.
There's this sense of entitlement that, you have to let us in on your platform. Because Islam is ours and it's not yours to talk about alone, right? Like, you have to get permission from us. You have to make it a debate. If I entertained every, 16-year-old who can get on the internet and challenge me to some kind of argument or debate or this and that, I wouldn't have time. It's just a distraction. So if I ever have these discussions, which one time I kind of inadvertently had on TikTok, and it was very entertaining. It was 2 hours of the guy just flailing around. It's for educational purposes, basically, maybe even entertainment purposes, but that's not my target audience here. So yeah, whenever they come up and they're like, "Hey, you're a coward, you have to justify yourself to me," I'm like, "No, no, I'm a small channel who doesn't have time to deal with every single Muslim. The ratio of like Muslims to ex-Muslim is huge."
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah, they've got 1,000 channels you can go watch that promote it.
Hmm.
Period.
Yeah.
Tell that same thing with apologist. There was apologist girl who was like, "This isn't fair. What you're doing isn't fair. I thought you were a balanced channel." Balanced? Have you read the title of my channel? Right, I'm pretty balanced for an atheist type channel. Right, I'm an atheist. I'm pretty balanced. The fact that I even entertain these things, I don't just post things. I have live shows where I interact and we have these conversations. I think that's pretty balanced if you consider the content. But if you also look at the Muslim content, right, it's pushing a pro-Muslim position, period. They don't bring, they don't interview ex-Muslims on their channel. They don't do that. But for whatever reason, you shouldn't be allowed to do that in the opposite direction. God forbid, like you can't, come on. Anyway, I want to make that clear that I'm not sure how long. This is an experiment I'm doing here currently with the whole opening it up. I want people to know that I have nothing against Muslims. I have something against the ideology, just like I have something against the ideology of Christianity's idea that you're born a sinner, you're going to go to hell inevitably by default if you don't believe in Jesus. These are things that I personally do. Now, if someone in the chat's a Christian, okay, I mean no disrespect to you as a person, right? And you shouldn't take offense to that. You might think I'm wrong, and that's okay too. But I do the same thing. So Muslims should maybe start taking notes from some of the Christians who've dealt with criticism far longer and have kind of developed a way of knowing how to act in light of that. So that's the goal. I did this on AP's channel too. He's like, "What the heck, man? You're getting all sorts of hate, or you're getting these like really extreme people coming at you." And I've had to block a bunch of people because I'm like, really? This is what we see. It becomes straw man, and you're a liar. There's nothing you can say that's true if you're speaking against this. Because
can I talk about that for a second?
Please.
This was one of the things that broke the what was it, the last straw that broke the camel's back or whatever. The definition of the word kafir, which means disbeliever, it comes from the word to conceal or to hide. And what it means is, the origin of the word is concealing the truth or hiding the truth. So I tried to understand, like, what is a kafir? Like, they believe in Allah, but they're hiding the truth, because that's the kind of character that was demonized in these stories. It's whatever king or whatever the prophets, whatever Abu Lahab, they would just be the worst people who are just always the bad guy, who do believe in God, but they're like, "Oh no, like screw you, God," that kind of caricature of a disbeliever does not exist. But no matter what I say, I'm told I'm in denial because I'm by definition a hider of the truth, So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nothing you do is right. Before we let anyone come on, because I'm going to bring one at a time, I repeat, only want Muslims who are actually active Muslims to join. You're more than welcome. I ask that you be polite. I ask that you be respectful, even though you disagree. Show us that this is something that can be done, and it can be done in a manner that isn't going to make me want to close the door on this altogether from allowing Muslims to come on. So if you're mature enough and able to have these conversations, please, I'd love to open up the door. Is there anything before we do that, though, that you would like to say to the audience pertaining to your deconversion and like anything that we didn't touch on? Because I'm sure there's tons of stuff we haven't talked about.
I've got a lot. There's so much that we haven't touched on, but if there's a takeaway that I've gotten through to some Muslims, believe it or not, especially ones who aren't aggressive to begin with, but even some of those, if they listen to me talk for a few minutes, and maybe if they have a back and forth with me, if in the comments or whatever, and I'm responding to a live stream, a lot of them realize that I'm at least honest where I believe what I'm saying, right? Like this is not me with an agenda I actually believe I'm going to hell and I'm trying to take people with me. If you listen to me talk, I'm not a crazy person, right? Like this, I sound at least genuine enough to tell you, like when I say this is what I believe, I mean it. If someone chooses not to believe me, then there's no point in having a conversation with them,
Right.
because I don't have to prove myself first.
Right.
But yeah, I just want to put that out there.
That's kind of weird. You have to put that out there just to say that up front.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird for me because I'm
Yeah.
not used to having to explain that and I get it. People think I'm probably demon possessed. Some fundamentalist right out there probably think this guy's got spirits or Satan's got a hold of him or something like that. And I understand that that's what they think. It's just kind of crazy that someone would believe you would, like, you want to go to hell and you want to bring other people with you to hell. Like if people actually are believing in that, that's insane to me. That someone would actually.
They do.
That's
Hundreds
insane.
of millions of Muslims believe this, and it feels like I'm shouting into the wind because, again, the contrast between being an apostate from Islam and Christianity is it's very obvious. Like
Yeah.
when you leave, it's not that your whole country or the majority of your country looks at you as some kind of outcast who wants to go to hell and you're an awful person, like all the bad descriptors. I think even like there's God disses disbelievers and calls them animal names and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's a huge scale, and I feel like no one's noticing this, but it is what it is. I'm getting
What do you
used to it.
gain from going to hell? Like what would
I don't know. I mean, if I truly like I put in all this effort, right? Why wouldn't I just pray and go to heaven if I truly believe this stuff? Like, is it because I want to drink alcohol? I mean, that exists in heaven. If I want women, that's in heaven as well. So what is it really? I don't know. Maybe we can ask a Muslim here to explain that part to us. I would be open to that.
It is an interesting point because there are some Christians who probably think I'm not one because I want to sin.
Mm-hmm.
You want to sin. That's why you don't want to acknowledge God or whatever. And it's like, dude, the psychoanalyzing that comes from people who think that way, it's just fascinating because I know where they're at. I thought the same thing. I seriously thought the same thing. So before we do, got a super chat. Mr. Monster, appreciate your love, man, and the support for the channel. Always. I believe Allah was Muhammad's imaginary friend.
I would have to agree with that. I mean, I can't comment on how much Muhammad actually said and did or not. I'm just going to presume that whatever Muslims take to be something that Muhammad said, that whatever hadiths they verify and they say this, this is something that he said, even though there's disagreement there. I'm just going to go with the majority opinion here. The timing of these revelations was just so convenient. Like the way that he would dream about certain things and just be like, hey, you know what? God told me to do it. It's such a cult leader thing. And that's one more thing that made me, made something inside me snap. It was watching cult documentaries, not at all like thinking that I'm going to relate to them and noticing the patterns. So yeah, I absolutely believe that Allah was basically his mouthpiece, right? Whenever he wanted something, not every time, but he'd often use it to his advantage.
And look, for those who don't quite get this, they're okay with saying Joseph Smith would do the same thing. He wasn't a real prophet. This guy lied about golden tablets. He says that the angel Moroni, right? Not Gabriel, but Moroni showed him where the golden plates were, and God the Father and Jesus and all this stuff appeared to him, and he had this imaginary friend experience. If he's really being authentic or whether he's a con man, doesn't matter. The point is they're okay with us saying that, but not when it comes to their particular special fragile position. And so yeah, it's a good point to bring up. And then also Oz, Jesus and Muhammad are myth. Boom, roasted. Oz, what's up, man? So Oz actually has a conference coming up, the Better Conference, which is going to be an atheist convention type conference, where we're going to be talking about how we can have interfaith dialogue with other people and just how we can be better. But I'm actually going to be reading a book, and I don't know how factual it is. This doesn't mean that I'm going to conclude what Robert Spencer says. Was Muhammad a historical person? And he goes into the data. He's looking to see, was there a guy? I'm willing to grant there was a guy. I have no problem with it. He doesn't
Mhm.
do, if we compared, just my own little take here, if you compared like the miraculous claims and some of the narratives of Jesus or Moses or whoever else, comparing it to what Muhammad did, Muhammad's more of a human in that sense. Like he does less of those miraculous things. So it's not unrealistic to think there was a guy named Muhammad.
Mhm.
And some of the narratives, are they really, as some would argue, like, are they really embarrassing in the time in which they're being written? Or is that something we're anachronistically putting out there? You know what I mean? What do they call that? What do they call that when something is embarrassing and it helps give validation to the historical reality of something? They go, they wouldn't have made that up because that was embarrassing about the
Oh,
prophet.
yeah.
You see what I'm
There
saying?
was maybe a small handful of instances. I can think of one that's in the Quran where, the prophet dismissed a blind man because he was too busy with some political leader or something like that, trying to invite them into Islam. And there was a verse saying, hey, you shouldn't have done that. And Muslims use that as some kind of evidence that, this is actually God scolding him, when it's not that hard to, say a verse that said, hey, you shouldn't have ignored that guy. Like it's not that deep.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Thank you, Oz. Appreciate your super chat, my brother. All right, we're gonna open up the room. Like I said, I'm going to invite only Muslims that are interested in having a conversation and show us that these conversations can be friendly. Here, I'm about to send the link, but I want you guys to know one at a time. Also, not all Muslims are the same.
Mhm.
This is something that you also find, like not all Christians. So I want to see more mature, like advanced people who start to become more, I don't know, thicker skin. They're able to have these conversations and not be offended to the point where they're actually trying to attack. And there you go. Sending this out. Let's see how this works. This will be our own little experiment here, Aladdin. And I hope that you enjoy this with me. I will be screening, of course, making sure that people aren't over talking you and we can have friendly discourse. But I'd be interested to hear, like, what are some of the things you think he should have said or whatnot. And so that will be what we'll do. And you let me know. I mean, if I've got to mute someone, I will. We'll see.
That's fine.
So the perfect dawah is in the chat already. We've got one. I'm going to bring you on here. And just keep in mind, my friend, I'm going to limit this because we've already got 3 people in the chat to like up to 5 minutes at the max. So everyone wait in the chat, if you will, and I'll bring you on. Let's start with the perfect dawah.
Yes.
All right. Welcome. Welcome.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you very much. I would like to say, first of all, that I'm a former apostate myself. At the age of 25, I started to think that about existence of God. And okay, I say like this, that because of lack of knowledge, I became atheist. But later, when I got better knowledge, I realized that I was wrong. So I converted to Islam. And unfortunately, in 5 minutes, I cannot explain everything, but I see that, I don't know, Apostate Aladdin, I understand that you took the wrong interpretation of Islam, as unfortunately many extremists also doing that. Like, for example, this Haqiqatu, Daniel, I would like to, he's a real ISIS for me. And they have very, very, lack of knowledge in Islam, and I have been fighting them myself. And there are Muslims who are fighting such a people. I follow a Muslim organization that is fighting such a people, such a oppressor regimes as well. So I would like to say very fast about your that particular verse you brought up about beating women. Okay, you know that in chapter 3, verse 7, Allah explained that Quran is with precise verses and with unspecific verses. So such verses are unspecific verses, and Allah says that the true meaning of them is only known by Allah and those firm in knowledge. So how those firm in knowledge understand such verses is that they put them beside other verses, okay? And they take the true knowledge of when they put it beside other verses.
Hey,
So,
Dawa, just so you know, we're almost at 2 minutes
All right.
already.
Mhm.
And so
Okay.
keep in mind, if you wanted to have a discussion, I mean, sure, you want to waste your 5 minutes just talking. Then when we get off, I'll have Apostate Aladdin, explain or go into what he thinks. But I want everyone who comes on to keep in mind, like, I know you guys want to like load him with what you think and what be cool to have a dialogue for some of you guys instead of just come on and just, I know you have a lot to say, but we have other people waiting. So please, you have
Yeah,
3
but
minutes.
yes, I would like to explain at least one thing, and this verse that Hariraju is misinterpreting it very much is strike. Strike has been used in Quran in many different places.
I just want to stop you right here to let you
Yes.
know that I know what you're going to say about this. So I'm just
Yes.
saying this to not waste your time. So I am aware of all these points because I looked into them trying to make it make sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you
Okay,
want me
let
to
me-
comment on these
Hold on,
things,
Dawa. Let him
Yeah.
respond.
Yes, he said that.
yeah.
Okay, you want to continue? Let do it then.
Yeah. Okay. So just to say it briefly, first of all, someone said that you're a modernist. I appreciate that you're fighting against the interpretations of people like Hakikochu.
Yes.
And here's the thing: you care to defend the idea that Islam is perfect. It's just that this version of it is not. To me, I already don't believe that it's from God. And when I critique something, like I just can't jump through some hoops to make it make sense, like some apologists or modernists even would do. So everything that you're going to say about the wife beating verse, I have come across. And trust me, like I speak Arabic. I looked into this as someone who wanted it to make sense, and I can respond to them one by one. But anyways, if you have anything else you want to ask me as well or say, please go ahead.
Yeah, but it looks like that you have already made up your mind, and it's not possible to talk to you. You're not going to listen to what I'm going to say.
Trying to save you some time because if you'd like me to go ahead and talk about
Yeah.
the apologetics about the wife,
Yeah,
beating, I can do that.
let me fast tell you that every verse of Quran came to solve a problem. Like when you want to enter a house, you have to get the permission. So if people got
I
the
don't think that
permission,
was a problem though. I
no,
don't think that was a problem.
so if people used to get the permission, so when the verse comes, then people would say, "Oh, is he crazy? We are getting permission. We knock on the door." So perhaps, or when they were burying their daughters alive, that verse came that don't do that. It is forbidden. So if people didn't do that, then people would say, "What he's talking about? We are not burying our daughter alive." So these things was happening at that time, like even today in 21st century. A few months in the lockdown, 1,000 women were beaten to death in Mexico only. Okay, so men have always been beating their wives. So if Allah was for beating wives, then he wouldn't send a verse, because yes, we are beating our wives. So what Allah says, beat your wife? No, it is not that. Allah, first of all, has tried with 3 stages. First
30
stage,
seconds.
yes, first stage, it says that talk to them. Second,
I know, and then
separate,
yeah.
yes, bed. When you separate, I am a married man. When you separate bed, you already, tomorrow you might forget, you come down, and so Allah was trying to seize the situation and help the situation. And the third one is saying that leave.
10 seconds.
Yes, leave her. So the next verse of that verse says that, and if you fair for them be separated, bring them.
All right, my friend.
Okay,
Time
so
is up.
I don't know.
Look, I have to limit. We have people waiting. The
Okay,
perfect
I just
Dawa,
would like to invite you to my channel. I would love to discuss with you longer, because these 5 minutes, I know I can give you every single proof that this is the message of God, because I converted to the perfect message of God. Okay.
Thank you so much.
I
You have a
would
good
like
one,
to
my
invite
friend.
you. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right.
So let's have you address that real quick. We have other people who are waiting
Sure.
in the
Yeah.
forum. Look, do what you want with your 5 minutes, but I'm going to be very dogmatic about your 5 minutes. It'd be cool to just have an awesome, cool, friendly conversation, not a lecture or try to tell you how you're wrong about everything. But I'm not going to tell you what to do with your 5 minutes. It just seems like that's something that they got to tell you how you're wrong or how you really aren't seeing it. You just don't get it, all that. I understand, but a cool conversation would be interesting. Anyway, British Muslim was next.
Wait, I do want to address some of what
please.
he said, though,
I
first.
apologize.
Yeah, that's all right. If I'm interrupting someone and saying, "Hey, I know about this," it's not to be rude, but because the time is limited, I want to get the most out of the conversation. So if we skip ahead, that might help. But anyway, there's a few things that he said. Like you said, he started off by saying that I misunderstood Islam and this and that. I don't care to get into that too much at the moment because of time, but he said that there's a verse, I know of that verse, saying that some verses are clear and some are not. That doesn't excuse the fact that the verse about wife beating is not clear. That's as if I handed in an assignment to a professor and I said, hey, some of this isn't going to make sense, but, I gave you a heads up. It does not excuse the fact that it doesn't make sense. It's just kind of covering your own ass kind of thing. So if God was truly perfect, why would he put a verse that could vaguely mean beat? Like, if we're being honest, I don't understand when non-Arabic speakers try to lecture me about what a word means when they are so far removed from the language that they're just hearing what other sheikhs are saying. I can guarantee you that, if I pull up this mushaf right now, and I might, if you'd like me to, the tafsir says beat them. If God meant to say separate from them again, but use the word for beat, he's an awful writer. He's illiterate in a way. Obviously, the writer meant actually beat.
Right.
So that's just something I want to address. And he was saying verses came down for a reason. Well, there was a verse about there is no problem if you're blind and you eat at your house, and if you're sick or if you're whatever, you can eat at your friend's house. It's just a useless verse that basically gives people permission to eat where they would usually eat. So he was saying it as if every verse was addressing an actual problem when, people entering houses without asking was not really that big of a problem. But anyway, that was a very long tangent, but yeah,
Well,
I
thank
guess.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm going to try and limit that. I hope people can come on and have cool conversations, and even though they disagree, it'd be interesting what they have to say. So welcome, British Muslim. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to MythVision.
You're right, lads. Yeah, I'm good. I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Good,
right?
good. I hope we have a cool, friendly conversation here.
Yeah. By the way, the previous speaker, the perfect hour, that guy, his name is Mujtaba Ruz Buhani, and he's a member of the MEK, which is a crazy group in Iran. I mean, they're considered even worse than the current regime in Iran. They've killed thousands and thousands of people in Iran.
Huh.
That group. Yeah. They're a communist. It's a communist force. They want to get
I
rid
mean,
of the Islamic.
he's not here to defend himself, so
yeah. We don't know. We don't.
Thousands, yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, what's your questions, or what would you like to discuss with Aladdin?
Yeah, I just want to ask him what's his opinion on the debate with Harish Sultan and Daniel Hakikatju that took place. I think it was a couple of days ago now. I wondered what your opinion is of that.
I did not watch that actually, and I don't know if I intend to, because it just seems like a lot of effort to watch something that I don't think is fruitful, to be honest. Debates in general, especially between these two camps, tend to just be about winning, and I don't even think the topic interested me that much. Yeah, so I didn't watch it.
I can tell you, I saw clips from it, and
I don't know how well Harris did in general. Like some of these clips about Hakikatru just saying things as they are, that alone is interesting, but I don't know how well the whole debate went, so I can't comment on it.
I think
what were your thoughts, British?
Yeah, I think it would be better if someone like you, Apostate, debated Daniel rather than, say, Harris or Apostate Prophet, because they're not really good at debating, maybe because English is not their first language, etc. Maybe someone like you.
I mean, it's not mine either, but I want to ask you, what would be the point of that debate, or what is the goal?
Okay, so Daniel he's debated two ex-Muslims, right? And he's come across as, like, I would say, probably the winner of both those debates, right? From a neutral perspective, right? Say if you're a neutral person in the audience, because the other two, they were incomprehensible. Like you couldn't even comprehend what they were saying. They were so bad. But someone like you, who knows how to talk, or someone like Amin Nawabi or Mariam Namazi, or someone who potentially be a good debater, could put across reasonable arguments against him, because this guy's a Harvard graduate, right? He's not just like a normal person off the street. And you guys could.
Well, I just want to know. I mean, I appreciate you you saying that and thinking that, but I want to know what would be the goal. Like, first of all, what is the topic and what is the goal of the debate?
Well,
what is the point of this? Yeah.
Well, the goal is always how it comes across to the audience of the viewer. So Daniel's people who view his channel, the way you come across to them, that basically you're going to be trying to persuade them onto your perspective, right? So that's going to be essentially the goal.
I'll give you my thoughts on that. It's Daniel's audience are so far removed from the kind of audience that I want to target, to be honest, because my mission here isn't to make as many people as I could leave Islam or change their minds about apostates. It's very hard. It's an uphill battle. And also, what is there to debate with someone whose opinions, like, you know, you've seen the clips, how he feels about child marriage, how he feels about this and that. It feels kind of fruitless to go and debate something that everyone else, aside from his followers, can see very clearly how absurd it is. You know what I mean? I don't do debates for the sake of debates. And a lot of these debates tend to be, does God exist? You know, can you prove that God exists? That doesn't interest me in any way. If there's a specific topic that, you know, you have in mind that you think I'd be, you know, good at having a discussion with one of them about, that sounds, you know, maybe in the future. But also don't forget, I'm a tiny channel. They're not going to give me the light of day, and they probably don't want to give me that kind of traffic, you know? So.
But the problem is if you don't debate him, if people like you or Armin or Mariam, you don't debate people like Daniel,
1 minute,
then it's just left to Apostate Prophet and Harry Sultan, right? And then they come off really bad in a debate, and then it's not good luck, is it?
I see where you're coming from. Yeah, like if anything, you're kind of trying to stick up for us by having other representation aside from these two or whoever else has been participating. It's just that debates are exhausting, especially when, like, my point is not to win or to convince the other person. There's nothing that I can say that would convince Hakikachu not to justify child marriage, for example. So the conclusions have already been made about something, you know, so decisive. I wish I could, you know, give more time to representing more ex-Muslims, but I only have so much energy. Yeah, so that's how I feel about that. Maybe in the future at some point, maybe.
Time. Cool. British, thanks for joining me, man. Yeah, hey, next, like I said, I really appreciate these. Even if you came on and you had a contention or you guys wanted to discuss, I open these doors. You guys are setting an example. While I have you here, I just want to say you're setting an example for why I still want to be able to have these conversations. I just feel like some people in the chat might not be able to have that kind of conversation without getting upset. So thank you for showing it. Coming on and being kind.
Yeah, my pleasure, mate. My pleasure. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, British Muslim. Yeah.
All right. Do you have any other words? I don't think there was anything like.
No, nothing. I mean, I just want to talk about, it's not how British Muslim came off or anything, but debate cultures is huge in this ex-Muslim sphere. And it's usually the Muslims trying to debate the ex-Muslims. Again, this has to do with the having something to prove or defending Islam or this and that. We, like, if we spend so much energy on that kind of stuff, it distracts from our missions here. At least I can speak for myself. I feel like sharing my thoughts is more important than fighting about an opinion that I just 100% doesn't even need explanation to someone outside the faith. You know what I mean? So I care more about the ex-Muslims and the people who are, you know, just having these reasonable thoughts, even if they remain Muslim, if they're reformists or whatever. I care more about those people than Hakikachu's audience.
Well, okay, we have another one. Karanis, I'm going to bring you on. We have 5 minutes. Welcome to MythVision Podcast. And I'll try to smile more since our audience asked me to smile. I'm just mesmerized and listening and wondering, you know. So forgive my bland looking face. Karanis, welcome. You're on the show.
Thank you very much for taking me in the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Did you have any questions or anything that you'd like to address?
Yes, I do have a question. I think that the atheists deny existence of God because they have taken a wrong image about the God They think that an old man with a long beard is holding up all the universe, and everything in the universe uh, is being controlled by an old man. They make image of some god and then deny it. It's totally wrong. I think that universe itself is God. If not, there is another God. So
Interesting.
so being no God is impossible, because you take birth out of nothing. For example, 500 years before, you were nobody, and certainly you came into being. So there is someone who makes you into existence.
Okay, so
So
Aladdin, respond. Let Aladdin just kind of
Yeah.
butt in here and have a dialogue.
First of all, I want to explain what atheist means, at least to me. You know, correct me if I'm wrong. You probably know more about the definition than I do, Derek. Atheist to me just means I reject the claim of, you know, your God. It does not mean I don't think anything could have possibly started this whole, you know, chain reaction, or the Big Bang, or created us, even engineered us. Who knows? Like, engineered us for maybe evolution to be the mechanism that made us happen. That's all up in the air. It does not mean that it's a 50-50 chance, though. And I'm not saying that there's no possibility there's a higher kind of being or force that, you know, brought us to be. The way that you're presenting it, that God is the universe and God is everything, it seems like a kind of a mystical point of view, which I don't necessarily oppose. It's more about the specifics. Yeah, I don't know if that kind of answers that. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Quranist, are you a Quran only Muslim?
yes, I'm a Muslim. I believe in God, and I believe that the universe itself is a God, and it speaks to us. It gives us birth. It evolves us gradually, and it listens to us. Everything that we gain as a knowledge, it is already there in the knowledge of universe first.
So
Then
let me
we
ask
get
you
it
this
out
real
from.
quick. If
Then
I
we
may,
get it out from that universe and say that God made us know this thing, that thing, and that thing.
okay,
Whatever our
question.
scientists are
I have a
learning, they are
question.
learning it from God.
My friend, I have a question. If I may, what type of Muslim are you, if you don't mind me asking? I'm just trying to find out what specific version of it you are part of.
I'm a moderate person. I believe I read Quran frequently, uh, and I know that everything that Quran says uh, is true, but it is misunderstood by most people, especially Muslims. Muslims think that there is a God sitting on the thrones high above in the heavens.
Wait,
This is
there's
wrong.
something I want to
This is
say
not
about that,
true.
though. If it's
God doesn't say
misunderstood
this.
by...
He
Go
says
ahead.
that.
I muted him. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to butt in for a second. If it's misunderstood by most
Oh,
Muslims,
sorry.
and, you know,
Hold on.
So I
non-Muslims don't
was.
understand.
Hold on. The
Yeah.
guys, I don't want to have to kick you. So hold on 1 second. Let Aladdin
Yeah.
respond, and then
I always hear this, that it's misunderstood. First of all, it needs to be clearer to understand so that the dummiest of dummies can understand it, because that's how God made, you know, those of us who misunderstand. That's just how he designed us, allegedly. And then if most people misunderstood, then who's the message for? How bad of a messenger or a message was this? That's what I want to ask you, dear Quranist.
okay, unmuting you, my friend. Go ahead and answer his question, please.
May I answer?
Yep.
First of all, you say that there is someone who creates us. That is God. Don't call him God. Uh, take him as an variable of the algebraic equation. Say him X. X creates creates us. He feeds us.
30 seconds.
He makes us die, and now we can see who does all of these things. Now we get that this whole universe is doing this to us. So there is no chance of being a god separate from this universe. This universe itself is a god, and Quran mentions exactly about this.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Time is up. Thank you for joining me and being friendly. I'll go ahead and drop you off. Apostate, would you like to respond?
I don't know if there was much to respond to. I mean, he was sharing his understanding of what God means. I
Right.
didn't get to ask him a question about, does the universe threaten us with hell and torture us as well? Like, is that part of it? Because I am open to the possibility that, there is a God out there, but it does not matter to me. The only part that matters is, and it wants us to act a certain way, or else it's going to torture us, and it meant to tell us this and that. So the first part of God being everything and whatever, it's inconsequential to me.
Right.
So I have nothing to disagree with or anything.
I mean, let me ask you this, based on your understanding of other Muslims and being a Sunni, do any of the Muslims that you know of, for the majority, ever say those things the way that he described them? Or is that like a moderate kind of a mystical, kind of a different interpretation that is probably not part of the
it's not the mainstream, and usually Quranists are not the mainstream. Those who like dismiss the hadith, and they think, like he was talking about God being on a throne and a bunch of different descriptors of his shape and this and that. A lot of them came in the hadith, and Quranists dismiss them, and they say, most Muslims misunderstood God, basically.
Right.
So you find some of them.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, is there a cause behind the universe itself? I personally look at the universe, or everything that, we exist, and it seems the natural world can explain this. As far as what happens before a certain time, when you go far enough back, that is where the big question comes in. And for me, if you've been able to explain 9 out of 10 things that, let's just say 5,000 years ago, let's say 9 out of 10 or 1 out of 10 things we could explain naturally, but we gave all the other 9 to, well, God caused the volcano, and God sent the plague, and God caused this person to die, and this happened, and their fate, that kind of stuff was always explained supernaturally or in some way superstitious. And now we've come so far with our research and our science that we now are like, okay, we have the answers to 9 out of 10 now instead of 1 out of 10. And it's all naturally explained why volcanoes and tectonic plates are shifting, causing the crust of the earth to, and on and on and on, all these natural things. God ends up becoming more complex. He's no longer a guy sitting on a throne, okay, in
it's
heaven.
All metaphorical.
It's all metaphorical, and it's all spiritual, and it's all about this, like, it's just anthropomorphic language, which isn't literal. And now you have to, because we now know those things aren't true, we've now shifted God to become this thing that is, like, in essence, part of you, or, something like that. And there's just, there's this one step, right, that we can't understand, or we don't have enough answers for, like what happens prior to the Big Bang. If the universe did have a start, everything came from nothing, you idiots. We may not even grasp the concept of what is outside beyond that in terms of multiverse ideas. Who knows? So, you got to flip a coin, like you said, like, where are you going to land on this? And when I look at the natural world, I don't see people rise from the dead. I don't see these things happen all the time. I personally think I have a very logical and a consistent worldview, looking at the natural world and saying, there's just that 1 out of 10 that I don't know the answer for. And I'm not, since I've explained 9 of them, I now know the answer to that. I have no reason to leap to the 9 or the last 1 to 10 and go, that's where God comes in. No, we've already shown you 1 through 9 doesn't require that God, even though we used to think it did. Lightning came and thunderstorms and floods. All of that was God. We don't have any reason to think that. You have to make God further mystical and further metaphysical and all of these things. But Derek, you don't understand the language. Aladdin, you never really understood it. It always meant what we now know it to mean in 2021, and not what the,
do you know how not efficient that communication is? If only 1% of all Muslims, let alone of all humanity, 0.1% really understood God, how bad of a communicator is he? That alone kind of, I don't know if it's empirical evidence or however you want to put it, that disproves Islam. But if God claims he's perfect, but then sends a very encrypted message that sometimes could mean beat your wife, sometimes could mean he's everywhere and all the time. It's just, it doesn't add up. I use an analogy for this. I've used it before. When someone presents an answer and I don't have an answer to that question, they usually think it's a gotcha, especially when Muslims ask us, like, then how did we come to existence? Just because you have an answer doesn't mean that it's better than not knowing. Like the analogy that I give is if I leave the house and I see that my car is gone, I could presume that it was towed or it was stolen. If I see like broken shards of glass, then I have a theory that it might have been stolen or whatever. But if I don't know and my roommate came and said, hey, the car like gained sentience like Herbie and just drove away, that is an answer that he asserts very strongly.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it's a valid answer, let alone the one. You know what I mean?
That's a really funny, good one, actually. Yeah. And I mean, look, there's other people, right, that have, it's just as plausible to say aliens, or just as plausible to say some other divine creation story from antiquity, whether Mesopotamian or what else, that might try to say a turtle, created the universe or something like that. And they looked at the natural world and said, well, we think we're the center of the universe. The turtle really is. Or an elephant in the metaphysical realm with all knowledge created all things. And you go, what the hell? No, it's got to be immaterial. It's got to be this. How do you know outside of the universe that there isn't something that is material? It could be potentially something beyond our comprehension. I don't know. We can make up crap. And it's just as plausible when you start doing that to come up and concoct with almost any idea. One interesting philosopher I had on, and I'll put the post for people to be able to join. If you're a Muslim, I only want Muslims to join, because this is what I do. Is I like to have these discussions, especially showing that we can have interfaith dialogue and find ways to communicate across the board without yelling and cussing each other out. But Bernardo Cashapp, really smart philosopher guy, way smarter than me. I don't know enough to sit here and act like I could debunk what he's saying. I still think a materialist explanation probably makes more sense, even though I don't have all the answers. I just don't. It's too complex to describe what he's saying. But he says the mind behind the universe isn't perfect. Now, you can't say that to someone who believes in God from the Quran or from the Bible or whatever. But he says, because this creation is a reflection, if you will, this world is a reflection of the mind of this creator, and that it's trying to still figure things out. So it's kind of like open theism in a way, where it's like this God doesn't quite, or this mind, if you don't want to use the term God because it has baggage, this mind behind the universe is like, it's got hiccups. It's still trying to figure out what it wants. It's working out its
like
kinks.
This could be its like school, high school project or something, like a science project for that being, right? Yeah. And of course, these kind of like open-ended hypotheses they're not theories, they're hypotheses, I suppose. They're entertaining to me. And, once I have the time and the means, I'm going to look deeper into philosophy. But right now I'm too busy with life to care if God exists or not, because I focus on, okay, let's presume he does. What does he want? And how can you prove that he does want this, or it wants this? So, yeah. But that's an interesting way to think about it, that it's imperfect.
Yeah, and when he said that, I was like, I'm not even arguing with that, because it's like, I wasn't arguing with him anyway. I was trying to like get his thoughts, but I just thought about it. I was like, that right there in and of itself it goes back to a version of God in a way, polytheism, and potentially even like an early henotheism, not later monotheism. See, our theisms have developed to make God all powerful, almighty, all this, all that. And when you put those attributes to it, you're going to run into some problems. See, if you have like Zeus, one of I can't remember who it was. They said, like, once you have these gods who don't know everything, and they're like kind of like humans, they're trying to figure things out, you can't quite fault them. They're not going to, I knew all things. I knew I was going to create hell before, like when I created the world and everything, I created hell as well, a place to put people who deserve to be punished, and the angels that fall, if you take the biblical Christian type of angle. But this all-powerful concept, you have to explain the problem of evil. And at least in these other ancient narratives, they're like, well, the gods themselves kind of do bad things. Zeus comes down and he rapes women and he rapes men and you're like, what the? Yeah, that's why the world's ugly, because even the gods up there in their own pantheon, they've got problems. So the reflection of what we see on earth is just a reflection of the pantheon of the deities. But you can't do that when you have an all-powerful God that's all loving and he can do no wrong and all these things. And it's like, I've read scriptures in the Old Testament that kind of indicate God creates evil, light and darkness. I create good and evil. But also doesn't know all things. Where are you, Adam? Now people go, that's rhetorical. He knew exactly where Adam was. But the narrative says in the garden there in Genesis, where are you? He didn't know where he was. He's mad that he destroyed all mankind except Noah. He repents. I won't do that again, guys. Like, he messed up. Like, I shouldn't have done that. And that actually comes from older Mesopotamian mythologies where God did not quite they were mad and upset that they had destroyed humanity because they were too loud. That was the Mesopotamian myth. The humans would not shut up. So God ends up or the gods, Marduk and whatnot.
He got annoyed, or they got annoyed. Yeah.
They got annoyed and they destroyed him. And in the Bible, they changed it a little to make it man's fault for why God destroyed by a flood, and not make it the gods were just annoyed and they destroyed him, making the gods look bad. They made God look better when they borrowed from the narrative. It's just interesting stuff. All right. Here's the stream yard link. I'm just having fun with you. By the way, I'm in total agreement with you. I don't really care for the does God debates, or God exists debates. I'm not really a big fan of them. I've watched a couple I like, but it's not like my interest. As you can see on my channel, I don't really host like every week. All right, does God exist? Does God not exist? And these arguments, it just kind of gets.
If you want to argue for or against it, you have to take a solid position on it, and I don't, because it's inconsequential to me, if that makes sense, right? And it might be interesting to watch, to think about how people think of God, but when Muslims approach ex-Muslims with that question, they miss the point completely, because I don't care, kind of. Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, I can respect that. You know what I mean? You don't have the answers. You don't know. And like, no one has to know all of these things to kind of draw conclusions, or to even have a stance, right? Like, someone
I don't need to argue about whether God exists or not to have an opinion on child marriage, for example. Like, let's just cut to the chase and see what the specifics of the religion are. Because otherwise we're just wasting time, arguing about very hypothetical things, right? That's my take on it, basically.
It's interesting you say that, because I suspect you've dealt with this before when you talk about child marriage or whatever it might be, beating your wife, whatever, right? The argument is, first, we need to prove God exists. We need to go ahead and get you convinced of our idea that a monotheistic God. Now we need to rule it down to what candidates of which monotheistic God makes sense. Yeah. Well, we'll argue against the Trinity. We'll show you that's not the one. Then we'll show you the Jews are wrong. That God seems evil and wicked, and he has just stuff Allah would never tell people to go kill every man, woman, and child, like 1 Samuel 15 or Judges 11, where
he would do it himself. That's what God would do.
Right, but he wouldn't take a human sacrifice as an offering. Judges 11 with Jephthah's daughter. They'll be like, nope, that's not Allah. So they'll go to Allah and try to make an argument. I'm just telling you what I've heard. They'll say, well, if you can show me in the Hadith or in the Quran that these are there, then in that particular case, I will be convinced. That's what they say. But they start with, let's convince you there's a God. Then we'll make it justifiable to show you that if this God does exist, it's okay to have a 9-year-old, or it's okay to be right, or whatever it might be. This is some of the arguments I have heard. Not all Muslims do that. In fact, we have one in the chat right now who I believe takes the stance that she wasn't 9, or that the Quran does not support this idea. And if you don't mind, can I bring him on? We'll get 5 minutes set up.
Yeah.
Awesome. I posted it out here. He's actually pretty kind. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I disagree with him on conclusions, but he knows how to be somewhat reasonable. He gets emotional sometimes, but what do you do, right? We all have our stances. All right, setting up the 5 minutes. Let me click him in here. Welcome. I don't know much. What's up, my friend?
How you doing, Derek?
Welcome back. I hope you don't mind me saying all this. I know that you get very passionate, so I'm just saying, 5 minutes, and you can go ahead and talk to our friend Aladdin.
Yeah, can you hear me? Because my microphone is not good sometimes.
Yeah,
I just want to ask, like, what grounds your truths? Like he said that he finds Islam like and Allah to be like illogical or something, yeah, according to him. So where does he ground this? What force grounds his truths? How can he make this assumption
my
like
truths?
Yeah, the truths. Yeah, where do you ground your truths?
I'm trying to understand the question. Where do I ground my truths about God, or like in general, how do I
About
define my
anything?
existence?
About anything. You made the claim, yeah. You made the claim that Allah makes
No,
no sense or Islam makes no sense.
I
Where
don't
do you
make the
ground
claim.
this?
Like,
What force grounds this truth? This claim.
Mhm. So, was it? I mean, I'm thinking of Descartes' meditation when he was talking about the one where he was basically presuming. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I think, therefore I am. Like, I have to start by presuming that I exist and that my thoughts prove that I exist, and that's my starting point, basically. God, according to the narrative, gave me the mind that I'm using right now, and He knows exactly, if He does exist, how I'm using it. So my conclusions are based on. Sorry.
So you just said that God gave you the mind, yeah?
I'm saying I'm presuming, if we're presuming the narrative that God gave me the mind that I'm using right now, why would He mind me using it to its fullest extent? Honestly.
But then you admit that there is a God.
No, I'm presuming.
Once you
admit
that there is a God, then your whole argument collapses. There is nothing to discuss anymore.
There's no argument here. I'm
no,
not
I mean,
arguing
I don't think you understand me. I don't think you understand me. You use your faculties, you use your faculties to decide whether you exist or not. You have to. Right. Everybody has to, yeah? But what grounds them? There has to be something fundamental to ground this your faculties and all the. So it can be it can be like.
Let me try to answer that.
Like,
I
for
think
example,
what you're trying to get at. I think what you're trying to get at is that God is what, or religion is what grounds you, right? But I'd have to ask you, can you prove that first? You know, this grounding us in reality. Can you prove religion to be reality first?
No, but I have an excuse, because I use Quran. I use Allah, which is a fundamental truth. Allah says He created everything in truth.
Can you prove that part? That's what I'm asking.
I don't need to. I don't need to. I'm using.
My friend, what if Christians say Jesus is He did die, rose again, and He is God, one with the Trinity? What if they start with that's true, and they don't need to prove to you that that isn't true, and you're like, no, it's not true because Allah is. And if you were to like debate with a Christian, because me nor Aladdin, I don't know, but I'm not a Christian. I think you're not. But either way, if you're debating with a Christian, how would you answer them?
One way I can answer them is they have a problem with Trinity. They have three persona. This is the biggest problem, like, because if you
Judaism. I'm sorry, let me scratch that. Judaism, monotheism, and Judaism, because there's only one God, and I already know the argument there. So I'm not even trying to get into the illogical concept of the Trinity. Let's just say Yahweh versus Allah, and here you have Judaism, and you're debating, and they say our God and our story is true. And they say, that's our grounding. And you're saying, no, Allah is true. And the Quran and his prophet Muhammad, which they reject as a prophet, how would you show them or explain to them that?
When it comes to Judaism, Allah and Yahweh are one. They are one God. We believe the same God.
That's according to Islam, right? I mean, you use another example. It doesn't have to be Judaism. Some other monotheistic religion.
Zoroastrianism. There was one, Ahura Mazda, okay? Or Zoroaster. So single deity.
All the other gods except the God of Islam, none of them tells us that the God who created everything, the grounder of all truth, exists outside the creation. Only Islam and Judaism say this. So you can eliminate all of them. You can just remove them all, because they are by default they are wrong, because all of them create inside the creation and they exist inside the creation. Allah says, Quran says that Allah does not depend on creation. He's the only God.
You know that's not
like Allah is perfect.
That doesn't prove anything.
So he's the only one who grounds all the truth.
Okay, I think there's a disconnect here.
I'm not sure. It proves my point, because I'm using. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So you're trying to say that Islam is your grounding, and Islam is a fundamental truth. Therefore, you have a grounding, and I don't, basically. But we're still stuck on that part where you haven't proved that Islam is a fundamental truth.
So
What you're saying
so
is
what would you
because
use?
no, because you're saying basically like that's the point of this talk here, is that you want to say that Islam is the fundamental truth and your grounding, but you're saying it is because the claim here is that God says he's the creator of everything, and no other religion says that, which I highly doubt. But even that on its own,
sorry, I never
that's
said
not
that.
proof.
No, sorry, I never said. I'm gonna try to. I never said
You
that. I
said God
said
is outside
all
of
the other
existence
religions.
and creation.
They say
Yeah,
their
you said,
God does not exist outside the creation. It exists in time and space. In many cases, Allah is the only one, and the Jewish God too. Is the only
I'm not sure
one
of
which
how that is
exists
true or not, but
outside the creation. As I said,
yeah.
creation changes. We are.
I think
But
we're still
creation
missing the point
changes.
here.
We know this
Let's
because we are
presume
part
you're
of
right.
creation.
Hold on,
So-
my friend. Look, we gotta let both of you guys chat. Let Aladdin respond real quick, and then we'll keep. Look, I'm having fun. If you're having fun, Aladdin, I don't want him to over.
Yeah.
I want to be able to have dialogue. So,
Well, I just want to say, let's presume you're.
I don't
you're
wanna-
correct, right?
I don't want to keep
Yeah,
you guys.
let's
I
hold
need
on.
to have people waiting.
let Aladdin respond.
No, that's- yeah.
We're not kicking you yet, my friend.
Yeah. Let's presume you are correct in the claim that only Judaism and Islam claim this, that God is outside of its creation, and therefore that makes sense to you. That still doesn't prove anything. That's still another claim on a claim, and in your head, that is the most logical way for existence to come to be, and therefore you're correct. But that's still not proving anything. That's just you already think it to be correct. It's like when people argue against the Holy Trinity, for example, or polytheism. Muslims always say, does it make sense that a ship would have more than one captain, when in reality it does? But also our conception of how God would act or how he would exist are all hypotheticals. So you're projecting on God that he only has to exist in the version where he's outside of creation or whatever. It still doesn't prove anything.
I follow what Quran says. I don't say anything that Quran doesn't say. Quran says Allah, he created everything in truth, and he's the truth, and he's the grounder of all truths. What can you give me a counter argument? What would you use as a fundamental force which grounds
I
all
say
the
that my
truths in the
faculties
universe?
are.
What would you use?
Into this, I say that my faculties are the ultimate truth in all of existence, and from my point of view,
But you cannot
the
prove
world
your
revolves
faculties.
around
That's
me.
the
Hey,
problem.
do you
cannot
want to know?
prove
Do
them.
you want to know what he thinks, or do you want to
Yeah.
interrupt him every time he tries to explain? So we have to allow each other to speak, my friend. Please let him finish.
So I just thought of this right now. I see the world from my point of view. For all I know, this could all be a simulation and my brain is in a jar somewhere, right? So for all intents and purposes, my truth is what I experience, right? And that is more grounding than some claims in a book. That's my opinion of it. Because up to this point, you still haven't said anything about actually grounding us all in the same reality as you. Because trust me, if you have a good point about that, I will agree with you. So,
But even if you are, as you said, a brain in a jar, and if something is wiring the information inside you, so that doesn't disprove my point. Even if you perceive everything.
If that is the case, how am I at fault for perceiving reality the way that I perceive it? How is that my fault?
No. But that is, I agree with you, but that doesn't disprove Allah. That's the problem. Even if Allah, let's say Allah.
Let me ask a question, if you don't mind. All right. I believe that elephants are the smartest animals on the earth because they have this wonderful way about them, how they drink through a tusk and their horns grow certain ways, and they're massive animals. They're really old. They've been around for a long time. But I also believe that they're kind of a figure for the creator behind all existence. Okay. This creator actually created everything. It's an elephant creator. How is that not true? I mean, I'm making the claim. It never had a beginning. It is an elephant type creator in the metaphysical realm. However you can imagine.
It's always in the room. It's always in the room.
Yeah. How do you disprove that that's not true? I mean, this is what I believe, right? I'm not literally. I'm giving an example. I'm saying, how would I go about showing you that my elephant is true or isn't true? Like, what would I say?
Do you think?
Probably a
Okay,
book.
do you believe that the elephant? Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to?
No, I was gonna say probably. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're. I don't know much. You're probably thinking of a book. Like he would have to have a book and a basis for claiming that the elephant is God. You know.
So if someone said it a long time ago,
Yeah.
in an ancient,
He needs to have intellect. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead. Eric.
no, you're fine. Because, like, all right, let's grant the Hindus for a second here, right? The Hindus are polytheists. They have animal figure deities. They have all of this stuff, and they might say the same things. They'll go, well, you're straw manning. No, our deities they never had a creation. They go back before the creation. They exist outside time and space. There was no start. There's just many of them. It doesn't require one. I can't disprove that. I can't there's no way to disprove that there aren't many gods that are outside of the universe. And they're really old stories. People have believed them for thousands of years. Why are they not true, right? Like, how come we don't say that that's true, but Allah is? And I just think that we're starting with faith. We're starting with, this is our story. We believe this story is true. And we believe it's true because of the narrative we've been sold, so to speak. I mean, I was raised a Christian. I believe that Jesus actually died, which most Muslims don't believe he was crucified. And he rose again from the dead. I believed that. I had no evidence that it happened. I had faith that it happened. I believed. I can't prove it didn't happen. I can't prove it did. But I can give you some really good reasons to doubt that this is literally historically true and that there are better explanations that probably fit the data. Can you do the same thing for Islam and the Quran? You might say no, but I've been talking to scholars who would say, well, the tradition contradicts, there's variance, and you would already get you probably get defensive because this is your story that you believe. I can't get you to convince you that what you believe isn't true, but I can also make an equally unfalsifiable claim that you can't say isn't true. I mean, you could say it, but you couldn't prove my position wrong about the elephant or whatever other position. I could just add all the attributes that Allah has claimed to have to the elephant. And then what are you going to say? I mean, it's a different God, though. I'm telling you it's not Allah. Do you believe me? No, you don't believe me. Well, it's written in a book older than 700 AD. Whatever. I'm just making the point.
Yeah, do you want me to answer? Well,
sure. Yeah.
I agree.
I'm having a conversation.
I agree with nearly everything you said. We believe, I use the scripture, and according to the scripture, I go what the scripture says. But I can give you an argument from logic. Like you said, the elephant, you used the example of the elephant, yeah? Now, the elephant is singular. It's one. So even if I take the elephant as being God, elephant needs to have an intellect. He needs to have a will. He needs to have
That's
all
metaphysical.
He has all that. The elephant has all of that.
He has everything, yeah?
Yeah, everything that you would say Allah has, the elephant has.
Yeah. Now the only difference is that you are using something which is a part as a creation, like being an elephant. You are using as a god. This goes against Quran because Quran says nothing in creation is like Allah. So this is what makes Allah unique. Everything which
I just want to ask you one thing, like if the
he would not be God, or he would not be God. So you can eliminate all the Indian gods straight away. Like
he didn't say anything about Indians, and I know that it's a little difficult to imagine because elephants are creatures, so you're projecting this idea that God cannot be a creature of himself. Right. No, I think Derek means just as an example of a figure, right. But I just want to ask you, I don't know much. So how do you start from a position of the Quran says something when the person you're talking to doesn't believe that this is from God? Isn't that circular reasoning or kind of self-evident?
Sorry, Can you repeat? I didn't get
Sure. Yeah. So if you say Allah is or the Quran says so and so, to someone who doesn't believe that the Quran is from God, it's like you're quoting a random book to me, right? How do you start that? Like, if I wanted to join Islam, how do you convince me that God exists if I don't believe in the Quran?
How do I convince you?
Yeah, like how can you start from the
The-
Quran says
the-
so and so, but I don't believe in the Quran?
The line is breaking up. Sorry.
Sorry, did
Well,
you get it? that time?
It depends. Like Allah says, yeah, now I got it. Yeah. One way I can explain this is because Allah says in Quran, He will. Everybody has to be convinced based on, because you are an ex-Muslim, yeah. You know that
Yeah.
Allah is Islam is about the inner what do you call this, inner logic. In a sense, Islam goes hand in hand with a human logic, with a human reasoning. So what Quran says is, like, if you don't believe in you read the Quran and you are convinced that Allah is not God and Quran doesn't say the truth and stuff, then that means that Allah is not going to punish you for that. He might test you in some ways, because Allah is the truth. He says He will never, nobody will be punished for something that he doesn't deserve. In the end, everybody will be like judged in a
So in that case, then
manner. You know,
non-believers,
He's all just.
well, in that case,
So, I
non-believers
don't think
are
there's
not
a
going to go
problem.
to hell, right? Like, just for not believing. In that case, if God's gonna, judge by their intentions and test them in certain ways, then there's no point of me
Yes,
going back to
but
Islam, right?
intentionally. Remember intentionally. If you, like I said, we are born with a human reason, like Allah says. Allah says fitra. You know that because you're an ex-Muslim.
Yeah,
we are
but
born
that's
with a fitra.
self-evident.
What
again.
does this mean?
Like,
This means that
Yeah.
you can be born. Yeah, but can I explain? Sorry, I'm going to make it very, very clear. Like, for example, you're born in Africa, in a jungle. As soon as you open your eyes, the first thing once you come, it's going to come in your mind. You exist, but you didn't bring yourself into the existence. So there is a force which brought you into the existence. This is the fitra. All humans. This is what Islam is like, human condition. This is why everybody is a Muslim. Allah says that everybody has born a Muslim, but then later on, so immediately you will understand that you have been created by some force, and the force which created you cannot be creation itself.
You haven't spoken to babies to ask them that.
In the universe.
How do you immediately? Like,
Huh?
you're saying what fitra is based on what Islam is, but you haven't spoken to babies who are just born and asked them, are you wondering about God? You just exist right now. And fitra is basically it's intuition that humans already have. Islam is claiming it for itself. Like, even correct me if I'm wrong, but
But
like
the
birds
baby-
flying south or whatever, that's fitra. It's
But-
the innate nature
the
that
babies-
God gave them.
Yeah. But the babies, they don't reason. What I'm telling you, once you start to reason, once you start to understand things, then you are held responsible. And if you are, like I said, like, there are people today who believe in like Derek said, in elephants. No human alive who has a reason would believe in an elephant, rats as gods, because
I think
an elephant.
Okay, let me
an-
just
an
summarize what you're saying. You're basically saying if you use your logic and reasoning, you have to arrive at the conclusion that Islam is from God. That's
yes,
what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
So
correct.
where does that put me? Does that mean that I'm not using my reasoning, or
No.
that I am?
You have used your reason, but for some strange, I don't know, there could be some problems in a way that you are seeing the Quran and
okay,
stuff.
Can
So
you extrapolate on that? Like, what do you
You're not
think
gonna be
causes
judged for
people to
that.
disbelieve?
You're going to be tested for that, but you're not going to
Gentlemen,
be like, for example,
gentlemen, pause for 1 second. I want to give a shout out to some of the fans who've helped super chat here. Robert, man, I don't want to butcher your last name, but I really appreciate the support. He says, less shouty boys and more scholars, please. So thank you. I appreciate the support. I do have 6 videos that I did with Dr. Shadi Nasir. They're on my Patreon, and they will make it to the YouTube world at some point. Slowly releasing those, and there is a long version of the whole 2-hour interview on the Patreon as well, but that will make it out, as well as other PhDs that I'm in current contact with that I'm planning on setting up shows with in the vein of Islam. Also, Nicholas Lamar says, because the Quran says must be one God, it disproves Hinduism, thereby proving the Quran, question mark. Circular. The Quran is true because it says all others false. I mean, it's like if Hinduism says that their religion's true and that all other religions are false, it's circular reasoning from their point of view. And you would say, well, I don't accept that. I don't believe that. But they do accept that. And they start with theirs is true. And once you start in a bubble, you're just going in the same circle, just trying to say how yours is true. If you're raised a certain football fan, for example, you're probably going to root for that team. It's not really about the statistics. You're not going out there going, okay, this year, who is actually at the lead? I'm going for the best team there is. There might be humans out there that do that, but most of them go, I'm from Oklahoma, therefore my team is the Oklahoma whatever, or I'm from this place. And so we defend our religions from what we were raised in, what we believed as we grew up, and now we're just adults arguing to make our religions true, or we're bashing other people saying ours is true. I do think that there's some truth to that. And then the last one, and then I'll shut up. I'll let you guys go. How much longer do you want to have this conversation, Aladdin?
If he has any more questions for me, because I think we're stuck in a loop here.
I'll ask him for one more question after this super chat real quick. Robert says, question, are there Dr. Carrier type scholars for Islam? If yes, bring them on, pretty please. Robert, I wish that there were PhDs in academia that were as open to talk about it as Dr. Carrier. I'm certain there are experts on this that dismantle things like this and go deep into the text and do all that stuff. But the problem
I have a guy for you, actually.
Is he PhD?
I think he's a PhD, in Islamic studies. Okay. I think so. The thing is, though, it's not a mainstream opinion. You cannot have that kind of personality and it being the mainstream Islam. But I do have a person in mind for you.
Okay, well, I'm looking for experts who know what they're talking about, and I'm going to be talking to Muslim experts as well as those who are probably in the West that are in these Harvard and other universities to kind of compare, and also compare the Muslim scholars over against Muslim scholars that would disagree on things, but not the apologist. And I hope that comes across clear. You'll see what I mean as I continue to do these episodes. I'm not interested in getting a guy who spends every day just trying to prove Islam's true. I'm more interested in a historical analysis, a critical method on coming and saying, here's what we can know based on the data. I interpret this as my faith or whatever, but I'm not like a guy out there on the front lines trying to debate every Christian or every Hindu or whatever to prove my faith is true. That doesn't seem very academic to me. So I'm not looking for that. Anyway, thank you for the super chats, everybody. Did you have another question? I don't know much.
Yeah, I want to say something. You see on your chat, there is a girl. She's called Milan. She's good. Bring her on sometimes. She's very good.
Who is she?
Her name is Milan. Milan is.
She's in the chat. You said.
Yeah, she's very good. And she can speak better. She speaks English.
Is her name.
She's good. Bring her sometimes. She knows more than me.
Are you talking about this chat here?
Yeah. That's
okay.
The one.
Well, email me. I'd be interested in learning more about where they're coming from. But like I said, I'm not looking for an apologist. It's more of an academic research myself. So that's my angle. But yeah.
Can I ask one more question?
One more question, my friend. And thank you for coming on too.
Thank you for bringing me on. You know you said something about the wife beating.
Right.
Can you read the surah, please? Because
sure. You want me to read it in Arabic or in English?
In English, please, because it confuses me sometimes. Can you read it in a?
Sure. Let's see. I can probably find it pretty quickly. It's 434. Okay. Okay, so it says. Yeah. This one here, I don't know how accurate this English translation is. I'll have to go through it and tell you. Men are the protectors and maintainers of women because Allah has made one of them to excel the other, and because they spend from their means to support the women. Therefore, the righteous women are devoutly obedient to Allah and their husbands, and guard in the husband's absence what Allah orders them to guard. Their chastity, basically. It literally says here, their husband's property. Like
so it's yeah. Sorry, can I just
Sure.
say something? So the word there, it's in absence. Yeah.
In what? Sorry.
In
his absence.
The Arabic word means in hidden, when the husband is not there. Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's what it says. So the entire surah is not about beating; it's about adultery.
No. That's
Yes,
not.
so that's what it says. Read it again. Read it again. That's what it says. Exactly, that's what it says.
That's not what it says. So here it says, and let me read the rest of it, right? So basically, God is saying good women would not have sex behind their husband's back when the husband is gone.
No.
Right? And then it says,
Okay, go ahead.
and it even says their chastity, their husband's property, like the woman's, organs or whatever.
No.
That's what it says. And then it says, as to those women on whose part you see ill conduct, admonish them first, then next refuse to share their beds, and lastly beat them. The thing is, though, if you think it's about adultery, are you supposed to advise her, hey, don't have sex behind your back? And then
I'm gonna try and explain it. Very easy. This is very easy.
Yeah.
See, Eric, the surah says in hidden, the woman has to save her chastity when the husband is not there. So how can the husband beat her for anything when the husband is not even there to see what's going on? How can this be about beating? This makes no sense.
If you'd like to argue with every exegesis that exists, please go ahead. But it wouldn't be something for me to argue against. Like,
the verse is very clear.
Well, I have one more question, and I'd like to address this.
Talking about,
my friend,
it says beat in English and in Arabic. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
So another question, right? At the end of the day,
yeah, I'm not talking about.
He's going to disagree with you. He's going to disagree with you on this, but remember that day you came on the live and there was another 2 Muslims that said that Aisha was 9 and that the Quran taught that you could sleep or as long as she was 9 or something. I can't remember. They were arguing something like that, and you were saying, no, that's not what it says. I just wanted Aladdin to know that he also says that this isn't like prepubescent. It's post or it's older ladies, like after they're done having periods. So you're definitely taking a different stance than most Muslims that I talk or encounter with. And that was like the guy that we had on earlier, the Perfect Dawa, who was saying like, it doesn't mean these things. It's not what most Muslims say. I wish most Muslims didn't believe that kind of stuff. Who wouldn't wish that in the West that doesn't believe in Islam, that would like to see?
If they could change it in the books, I am all for it. That's the thing. Like these points of trying to argue with us about what it actually means, you should go to Muslims and change it in the books so that it means what you think it means.
Derek, I love people like Aladdin because they bring, they challenge. It's always a challenge. They bring stuff up, so we have to answer them. You have to learn to answer them. I love this kind of stuff. It's brilliant. I think more people should ask questions about everything.
Hey, I got one more question.
I love this kind of stuff. Some people hate it, but I love it.
This is my last question to you. I don't know much. Do you enjoy talking to us here at MythVision more than you do like engaging the other Muslims who disagree with you?
That's a good question.
Yeah, but
you like talking?
Can I say something to you, please?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
you have
good to hear.
I'm your friend, man.
Remember last time I was in your stream?
Mm-hmm.
Remember one of the guys, he kept asking me questions. Like I was telling you and I was telling everybody else, like, Islam is peaceful. Islam is love. It like wants peace with everybody and stuff. And one of the guys, he was an atheist. He kept, I don't know, for some strange reason, he kept pushing me. He kept saying to me, like, are you Sunni? Are you this? And you know who does that? people who want fitra, who want enemies, to make people enemies, who want Muslims to fight. That's why I called him Taliban, because he was pushing me. I told him.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here.
Go ahead,
Like,
Aladdin,
that person was wrong for doing that, but I know where they're coming from. Sometimes they conflate, like, for example, apologists. Apologists say it has always been that way. You're wrong for even talking about this, you're even talking about this interpretation, because I've always understood it to mean don't beat or whatever, this and that. So ex-Muslims sometimes, or atheists or whatever, tend to get frustrated, but that doesn't mean that he should tell you what it should mean for you. It's just that we can assert that this is what it means here,
Hey, stop scamming, man. Seriously, I'm typing out. I really appreciate it when people are able to do that and help me out on the channel.
I want to thank you, Eric. I want to thank you guys for bringing me on.
Hey, look, man. It's no fun if you don't come on. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, man. We disagree at the end of the day, but I bet if we met in person, sure, you'd want to try and convince me. But I mean, I'm a friend of everyone, no matter what.
I don't try to convince anyone. I just try to say, to be honest with you, I don't tell people to become Muslim. Everybody has to choose himself,
Well, real quick, let me read this super chat because, people help support the channel, and I really do appreciate them. A popular and not very deep knee-jerk response to criticisms of Islam is, ask a scholar about it, ask a scholar. If scholars had amazing answers to what is causing apostasy, they would have disseminated it to the public. Interesting.
Agreed.
Interesting.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know much. I appreciate you, my friend. And until next time.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you, Aladdin. Have a nice day, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You too.
Look, man, this has been an interesting experiment. How do you feel about it so far? What did you think about it?
It's pretty good. I mean, I've considered doing a version of this on my own channel, but to be honest, I don't want to play the role of the moderator and at the same time the person talking. It seems unfair, like I'm talking over someone. So it's good to have the space to do this. So thanks for bringing me on.
Is it good to have a moderator that isn't you to do it, so that way it's not as, like, I don't know, it's not as confrontational, and like someone else is there to kind of balance the... I hope the Muslims feel like I'm being somewhat balanced, even though I don't agree, right? Like, I do feel like I need to, because we get passionate, and no words can get out. Is it Sadat? How do you pronounce this? Sadat? I hope I'm saying that right.
Wait, his name? Sadat?
Yes. Sadat?
Yeah, Sadat.
Thank you so much for the super chat, my friend. Derek Hamid Abdel Samad, I hope I'm saying that right, is one of the best out there. So I screenshot your super chat, and I'll look this person up. And then, of course, what I do is I'll email the scholars, and I'll send them kind of my resume with all my PhD scholars I've interviewed, and look at possibly reading some of their works on the subject and go from there and interview them.
Oh, I think that's an ex-Muslim, a very prominent ex-Muslim, Hamid Abdel Samad. I think so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks for the super chat. Tell me, what's your takeaway from today? I mean, what would you say were some of the highlights or whatever?
It was interesting, but I have to say there wasn't anything particularly new that I was exposed to today. I mean, thinking about it, the person who thought that God is everything and had a mystical approach to it, I've heard vaguely something like that before, but it's interesting to know that these Muslims do exist, because sometimes I need to remind myself of that. Especially when I'm bombarded by a specific kind of Muslim all the time, I have to remember that there's others out there.
Interesting. Just to address our friend here, I don't know how to... Can you read that?
Wait, M. Christian?
Yeah, I guess. This is...
I also call I am Christian is what they're saying.
Right. Okay. Today is not the day, my friend. What I need to do is get some ex-Christians come on, and ones that are willing and interested in having the discussions. We could do that, or on hangout days. Sometimes I have hangouts here on MythVision where it's kind of like I invite whoever, whatever, just come on, and hang out. So today is focused on Islam and having Muslims join an ex-Muslim on the show to discuss their issues with them, or even the disagreements, agreements, whatever. But I really want to do this again with you. I've got an upcoming live with Infidel Noodle, and she, like we did today. I'd like to have a hangout, but not so sure about opening the doors for conversation. She's a female, so you know how it is. Men are very dominant, and we got to come out.
Noodle and I are friends, and she shows me all the time the kind of commenters that she gets. So yeah, it might not be a great idea, but obviously, check in with her and see what she thinks.
Yeah. I mean, some of my guys who come in are reasonable and respectful enough. I do trust that they would come in and be respectful, but I would need to check with any of my guests first before anything like that, because she I know has caught a lot of hell. And other people, that are females that have spoken out or talked about it, they get a lot of crap for it. So, we'll see from there for sure. If you haven't already, seriously, go subscribe to Apostate Aladdin. Even if you disagree, right? Like, to have conversation, because you seem to be very friendly, even if you disagree. There are some very aggressive Muslims out there, like Muhammad Hijab, from what I understand. That guy's like not the kind of guy you would have like a normal conversation with. It doesn't seem on the topic.
What's weird is you always see Muslims in the comments saying you should speak to Muhammad Hijab, as if I've never heard of that person or their opinions, or as if they're going to enlighten me with a new view that I haven't heard. Right. When I don't know if you've heard of Ali Dawa. He's a friend of Muhammad Hijab's, and they proclaim very openly, if Sharia law was the law of the land, if we were in a country where Sharia law is the law of the land, apostates should be killed, and we have no shame in saying that.
Right.
So what kind of person is that you'd want to have a conversation with or even listen to? It's we're in completely different leagues here, and if people actually listen to me talk for a few minutes and listen to him talk, they'd see the contrast. But these things take time.
That's true. And I think a lot of the Muslims that came on today actually would agree with you, probably. I don't know this, but probably over against people like that they would call them Taliban, like our friend earlier. Dude, I can't help it. It makes me laugh because it reminds me of how Christians do it. Everybody does it. They all argue and call each other names when we don't like what they're saying, or we think they're mishandling our faith. That's why we're doing this. We think we're protecting God or the prophet or whatever by accurately thinking we have the correct understanding. And I just enjoyed this, man. You're really balanced, and you're mature in the way that you approach this. You're not very confrontational. Man, I really appreciate this and value your friendship.
Thank you. I'd say the same thing. I enjoyed this. Like I said, I didn't have the space to do this before, so I'd love to be invited again once you have the space for that, and just let me know.
Yeah, I'll probably have more, maybe do like a group of you guys, or have a couple, and then we could take call-ins or something, have fun,
Sure.
If you haven't joined the Patreon, we've got more videos. I've already edited since yesterday's live 2 or 3 more, right? There's some really cool ones here. This is the full-length interview with Shadi Nasir that is actually on the Patreon. If you're interested in seeing those, the first video clip ended abruptly with, why should I collect the Quran if the prophet didn't do that? Now, this is in the tradition, and this is coming from PhD expert Shadi Nasir. So we went into like, how did we end up getting the Quran that we have? We're going through the progressive ideas there, and we're going to get into some controversial stuff throughout the show. Here's a scholar on New Testament stuff also. And then here are all the clips for those of you who want to see the thumbnails. The real origin of the Kaaba. Hope I'm saying that right. What are Muslim scholars hiding? We actually play a clip of a Muslim scholar going through, like, with Muhammad Hijab, actually talking about something. He's like, listen, this is not for the public. This is not, it made people doubt. It really made people start to doubt. And it's like, whoa, what do they not want the public to know that might have people doubt? Quran borrows from the Bible. And of course, we've got the Hebrew Bible. We have Christianity, pretty much monotheistic or Abrahamic faiths. Burn all the variants. What's the point behind burning all these variants, and what happened there? Now, this is from someone like Shadi Nasir, who's not very aggressive. He's not like a guy who's going to come out like you might get some of the anti-Islamic people who are out there ready to fight against Islam and the ideologies. He's a well-balanced PhD from Harvard University who's saying, okay, this is what it says. This is what here's some problems that, you know, a lot of traditionalists have when they see it. So also contradictions in the tradition. Muslim apologists won't tell you this. Of course, look at the pretty eyes. She needs to cover up more than that, bro. She's too pretty.
Enticing. Too
Those
enticing.
beautiful eyes. I had to use that as a thumbnail. And then, of course, the one that was launched yesterday night is the Quran a Miracle. And then I have hundreds more, guys. If you want to join, it's as little as $3 a month. If you want to support more, you can. And I really do appreciate that. Sorry for the long-winded, shameless plug.
That's all right.
It's how I keep doing what I'm doing. And all the super chats to you. Thank you. Until next time. Is there any final words?
No, nothing in mind. Yeah.
I just want to say as we go, thank you to the Muslims who came on, who were respectful, who were, you know, decent, and showing me that this is something I would love to continue doing as long as we can keep this up. So I really appreciate it. Apostate Aladdin, I'll see you around, brother.
See you later.
Never forget, we are MythVision.